Good morning and welcome to Christ Community Church Live. We are so excited you decided to join us today as we hear a very special message from Pastoral candidate Joshua Stahley. No matter where or when you're watching, we invite you to share your service down below and enjoy this time of worship with Christ Community Church.
In our lives, that you are in control of all things, that we can rest in your peace, Father, because you are with us. We praise you.
Whole world may hold me down.
thank you that you walk with us, God. That we are never alone in our trials. That whatever circumstance we face, you promise to go before us. You promise to lead us, God, to bring us through the fire. You promise that the waters will not overtake us. So we give you glory. We praise you in the midst of our circumstance. We honor and glorify your name in the middle of our trial because you are worthy, God.
Between what remains of me
every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. Thank you for the future, God, that we have to look forward to. That our current circumstance doesn't determine the hope and the joy that we have in you. The peace that we can rest in, God, for what's to come. God, help us set our hearts on you and your promises. And help us to surrender, God. Can't go back to the beginning. Can't control what tomorrow will bring. But I know here in the middle is the place where you promised to be. I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? As I walk now through the valley, let unless you come, will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? I'm not enough. I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want, 'cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? Meet us here. Meet us here. Jesus. Oh. We need you. We need you, Lord.
Before we continue with this time of service, we have a very special message from Search Committee Chair Daryl Brodiga.
Good morning. This is an exciting morning for Christ Community Church. In a few minutes, Josh Stahley, who are elders, our Pastoral Search Committee, and our volunteer ministry leaders have put forward for your consideration as our next lead pastor here at CCC, will be delivering this morning's sermon. But before he does, I want to say a few things about our search process and then about Josh. 1 Thessalonians 5:18 tells us to give thanks for all things. We found this to be true even about COVID-19. The pandemic turned out to be a blessing in disguise for our search committee in 3 different ways. First of all, we had plenty of time to meet. We had met multiple times per week, as many as 4 times in 1 week. If we'd been following our normal pre-pandemic schedules, it would have taken us much longer to complete our search, and promising candidates probably would have found other positions. Second, those who were looking for pastoral positions also had plenty of time to go through our listings and to review the matters that we had posted online. Finally, we found that having our worship band and our worship service online attracted many applicants. All of us who go to CCC appreciate our worship band, and we all know how good they are at leading us into God's presence. But many times we heard applicants remark that seeing our worship band online was one of the main reasons they decided to apply. By the way, putting away the morning videos has taken a lot of work from several people, including Kelly Weber, who mixes the sound, and especially Dave Gold, to whom we all owe a tremendous debt of thanks, who has worked tirelessly and has put in countless hours so that we can worship remotely. Our search committee was diverse in age, perspective, and gender. It was a very lively and engaged committee. Everyone was enthusiastic and dedicated to the task of discerning God's will for our next pastor. Each of our meetings was characterized by fervent prayer and open and lively discussion. We diligently followed up on every applicant, all 35 of them, but it was very clear to us that Josh was by far the strongest candidate. I hope that by now you've listened to or watched some or all of Josh's 5 sermons that were posted online. He is a gifted preacher and explains and applies God's word very well. He has over 10 years of experience, has outstanding references, is highly recommended by Pastor Al and those who conducted outside interviews, including Dr. Dan Peterson, who is the Converge Mid-Atlantic Executive Minister Emeritus, and Gary Schroeder, our former Associate Converge Executive Minister, and Brian Weber, who's our current Converge Executive. We're confident Josh will be able to serve us well as our lead pastor. We believe he's the perfect age for our congregation, and his family will fit in with our families. Tracy, his wife, is a gifted and enthusiastic co-worker, and we were all very impressed by her as well. Finally, Josh is from this area and has a deep love for it and a desire and a calling to return here and to see Chautauqua County transformed by the gospel. After his sermon, there will be another short video in which I will explain what will happen next.
Hey, good morning, Christ Community Church. My name is Josh Stahley. It is a joy to open the Word of God with you today. Even if I happen to be sitting in my basement and you happen to be watching through a computer screen or on your phone or wherever you happen to be watching, it's still a joy and a privilege to open God's Word with you today. And my wife Tracy and I are so excited about what we see the Lord doing at CCC. We're humbled, we're grateful, we're expectant about the possibility of partnering with you to see people in Fredonia, in Dunkirk, in northern Chautauqua County, and all over western New York experiencing the life-changing, world-changing good news of Jesus. You know, people have asked me a number of times, what drew you to CCC? Why do you want to come here? And I could answer that question a number of different ways. I could talk about the opportunity to move back home to Chautauqua County, to live close to my parents. I could talk about the chance to raise my kids to grow up loving the things I grew up loving, things like the Bills and Wings and beef on wick. I could talk about all the exciting things I see at CCC, from the amazing people on the search team, to the great group of elders who serve this church, to the high-capacity volunteers who pour their heart and their soul into serving CCC and the community. And all those things would be true. But even beyond that, there is one thing that compels me more than anything else, and it's this. I want desperately to see people encounter Jesus. I dream of seeing my high school friends and my family members and people I haven't even met yet all over Chautauqua County meeting Jesus in a way that absolutely turns their worlds upside down. See, the fact is, when you and I meet Jesus, everything changes. And so what I want to do today is I simply want to look at a story in the Bible of how that happens, a story of how Jesus changes everything. See, whether it's because of our experiences in the church or what society tells us or what you see on the History Channel, nearly everyone in our society has some preconceived notion of who Jesus is and what he did. But when you actually get back to the earliest historical biographies of Jesus, when you actually read the Jesus of the Gospels, the Jesus that you meet there absolutely shocks you. He has these rough edges that refuse to be rounded off. And this isn't just true for people who have never read the Bible before. This is true for people who have been followers of Jesus for a long time. Especially if you've been a Christian for a long time, we have this tendency to get used to Jesus, to domesticate him, to lose sight of just how revolutionary he is. But the truth is that Jesus is radically different than any other social or religious option on the market. Jesus turns everything upside down. The Bible says that Jesus is the king and that he has come to bring in his kingdom. But when you read the Bible, you find that he is not the kind of king that we expect. His kingdom is an upside-down kingdom. He takes our expectations and he turns them on their head, and then he turns our lives upside down. You see, Jesus turns everything upside down, and so that's what I want to look at today. I simply want to see how the gospel, how the good news of Jesus and his kingdom turns our lives upside down, how it turns our church upside down, how it turns our town upside down, how it turns our world upside down. So, let's jump into our passage of Scripture for today. You can find it in the Gospel of Luke. The Gospel of Luke is one of the earliest biographies of Jesus. The Gospel of Luke, chapter 19. We're going to be in verses 1 through 10 today. Here's what the Word of God says. It says, He, Jesus, entered Jericho and was passing through. And behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. And he was seeking to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowds he could not, because he was small in stature. So he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was about to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. So he hurried, and he came down, and he received him joyfully. And when they saw it, they all grumbled. He has gone in to be the guest of a man who's a sinner. And Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, Today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Now we're going to see two things today about the upside-down grace of Jesus in this passage. Two basic truths of how Jesus changes everything, and they're very simple. Here they are. Jesus turns our expectations upside down, and Jesus turns our lives upside down. He turns our expectations upside down, and he turns our lives upside down. First thing we see, Jesus turns our expectations upside down. Look again at verse 1. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. Now, that setting is really important because the fact that Jesus is passing through Jericho means that he is going somewhere. And if you read the Gospel of Luke, you know that Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. And the fact that he's going to Jerusalem is really important because what's going to happen in Jerusalem? In Jerusalem, Jesus is going to go to the cross. Jesus is going to bring in his kingdom by going to the cross. And this particular narrative comes in a series of stories that show the way that that people are responding to Jesus and his kingdom. So maybe you're familiar with some of these stories. The Pharisee and the tax collector, the rich young ruler. All of these stories are stories that show how people are responding to what Jesus is doing, how Jesus is bringing the kingdom of heaven to earth. And here's what's so fascinating about these stories. Over and over and over again in these stories, you find that there are some people that you would expect to come into the kingdom, but they're actually missing it. And then there are other people who you would never expect. They are people who seem like they are hopelessly far from God, people who are completely cut off from God. And those are actually the people who are coming to Jesus. Those are actually the people who are coming into the kingdom. The good, upstanding, religious, moral people are missing the kingdom. And the despised, the sinners, the prostitutes, they're the ones who are coming into the kingdom. See, Jesus' kingdom is made up of unlikely people. And when he brings us into his kingdom, he turns our lives upside down. Jesus brings blessing to people who only deserve a curse. He brings salvation to people who only deserve judgment. He goes to the outsiders and he brings them in and he makes them insiders. And this flies directly in the face of everything that we are naturally inclined to expect. We believe that if you do good, you should get good things. If you do bad, you should get bad things, right? This is what we're taught from the earliest age. Eat your Brussels sprouts, you get a cookie. Throw your Brussels sprouts, you get a timeout. Or however you deal with that in your house. I've got 3 kids, so I am open to suggestions there. But the point is that we get rewards for being good. We get punishment for being bad. So there's something disconcerting about the fact that when Jesus comes along and he's calling people into his kingdom, it's not the upwardly mobile who are coming into his kingdom. It's not the moral or the educated. It's the outcasts. It's the poor. It's the diseased. It's the moral reprobates. That is not the way you and I would start a religious movement. Believe me, I have read scores of church planting books, and this flies in the face of every church planting manual I have ever read. And yet this is how Jesus begins his kingdom. This is how Jesus starts his church. You know, maybe you're watching this today and you're thinking in the back of your mind, the church isn't for people like me. Christianity isn't for people like me. You don't know my past. You don't know my baggage. You don't know my scarlet letter. You don't know my criminal record. You don't know what I did last week. You don't know what I did last night. Listen, friends, if that's you, then the church is exactly the place for you. Because I may not know where you've been, but Jesus does. And Jesus says, I'm coming to your place for dinner tonight. Come to the table and eat with me. You see this pattern all throughout the Gospel of Luke. And here we meet this guy named Zacchaeus. And Luke goes out of his way to show us that Zacchaeus is the furthest person you could imagine from God. You could not imagine someone farther from Jesus and his kingdom. Let me show you that. Look how Luke introduces Zacchaeus. Verse 2. He says, and behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. The first thing Luke tells us is that Zacchaeus is a tax collector. And not only is he a tax collector, he's a chief tax collector. Now, initially, that might sound good to us. It might be a good thing to be a leader in your profession. But not if you're a tax collector. See, in Jesus' time, if you were a tax collector, you were considered a con man. You were considered an extortionist. Because what tax collectors would do is they would abuse their power to overcharge people. They would cheat people out of their hard-earned money. And Zacchaeus wasn't just an extortionist. People would have seen him as a traitor. At this time, Israel was under occupation by the Romans. And so as a tax collector, Zacchaeus is an agent of the Romans. They see him as a traitor to his own people. Zacchaeus is just trying to carve out a little kingdom for himself, and he doesn't care who he needs to make a deal with or who he needs to cheat in order to do it. So now when Jesus comes along, when the Messiah comes along, when the King of the Jews comes along, Zacchaeus is the last person you expect to be part of his kingdom. Zacchaeus is exactly the kind of person that the king is supposed to be crushing. Tax collectors are the bad guys. Chief tax collectors are the worst of the bad guys. And not only is he a chief tax collector, but if you look at verse 2, it also tells us that he was rich. Now, if you've read the Gospel of Luke, what you see over and over again is that the rich are the people who are missing Jesus. Jesus says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. He says the wealthy tend to rely on their wealth, and because of that, they find it difficult to rely on God. The wealthy, Jesus says, are humanly unable to enter the kingdom of God. But Jesus also says that what's impossible with man is possible with God. And that's what Jesus is about to do with Zacchaeus here. He's about to do the impossible. He is about to bring an unjust, greedy, treasonous extortionist into his kingdom. He is about to teach a rich man that the kingdom of God is better than all the kingdoms of the world. He is about to take a man who currently worships money and teach him to worship God. If you watch the rest of this passage, you're going to see Jesus bring a camel through the eye of a needle. Verse 3, Luke tells us that Zacchaeus wants to see who Jesus is, but he couldn't get close to him. See, Zacchaeus is an outsider when it comes to the kingdom. Think about it. The crowds are close to Jesus, but Zacchaeus is in the back. He's an outsider. He is hopelessly excluded from Jesus and his kingdom. And maybe that's how you feel today. Maybe you feel like an outsider. Maybe you feel like you don't fit the profile of a follower of Jesus. Maybe you feel completely and utterly forgotten. And what I want you to hear today is that Jesus has not forgotten you. He knows exactly where you are, and he's coming to find you. Verse 3 says that Zacchaeus couldn't get close to Jesus because he was small in stature. Now, there's a couple of things going on here. In one sense, this is just what Zacchaeus looked like. He was small. He was short. The kids' song says Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. If you haven't heard that song, you can YouTube it later. If you have heard that song, I'm sorry if I got it stuck in your head. But the point is, yes, he was short. He was physically short. But there's actually a deeper meaning going on here. See, Luke intentionally chooses a figure of speech here that refers to more than just Zacchaeus' physical stature. It wasn't just about physically what he looked like. It was about his social stature. See, Zacchaeus was small in the eyes of the community. Nobody respected him. Everyone in Jericho knew that this guy was a lying, cheating, manipulative scumbag. He was a pathetic little man. He was socially small. But he's not just small physically, and he's not just small socially. He was small spiritually as well. His sin had shrunk his soul. If you've ever seen the Lord of the Rings movies, you know that there's this character named Gollum, or Smeagol, or whatever his name is, and he becomes obsessed with the ring. He calls it his precious. And eventually his obsession turns him into this hideous, pathetic, slimy little creature. That's what happened to Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus has become obsessed with the treasure, and it ends up turning him into something repulsive. It shrinks his soul. He made money his God. He thought money would make him great, but in the end, his money only made him small. Now, why is that? Why is it that so often we find that the very things we think will make us great end up destroying us? Why is it that the things we think will give us meaning leave us empty? It's because you can never rise above what you worship. You will never be greater than your God. So if money is your God, if money is the most important thing in your life, then your soul will only grow as big as your bank account will let you. And when you find out that there are things that money can't buy, your soul has to shrink to fit the size of its God. If sex is your God, if physical pleasure is the central pursuit of your life, then your soul will only develop as far as your sexual experience will let you. And when you find out that there's more to life, either you need to find another God or you shrink your soul to meet the size of your God. If your reputation is your God, then your soul will only grow as big as other people's ideas and opinions of you. And when they don't think highly of you, you'll be crushed. And even when they do think highly of you, you will be constantly afraid that they're going to find out something about you that's going to change their opinion of you. You can live for status, but in the end, it'll shrink your soul. And you can substitute anything else that you might be living for. Your family, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your Instagram following, your new boat, your next vacation. We run from one thing to the next, trying to find happiness. And each time we come away disappointed. We think, finally, this thing will give my life meaning. And in the end, it ends up shrinking our souls. Listen, friends, whatever it is, if you are living for anything other than the one true God, if anything other than the one true God is the most important thing in your life, it'll eventually disappoint you. It'll eventually shrink your soul. Jesus is the only God who's God enough to grow your soul. Jesus is the only God who is God enough to make your soul great. If he becomes the most important thing in your life, then your soul doesn't shrink to become like your God. Your soul grows to become more like him. But for Zacchaeus, his sin has shrunk his soul. But his life is about to be changed when he meets Jesus. Verse 4 says, Zacchaeus wants to meet Jesus, so he runs along and he climbs this tree overlooking the road. And to everyone's utter shock, Jesus stops and talks to Zacchaeus. Now, if you're watching this in the crowd, there's only one thing you expect to happen at this point, and here's what you expect. You expect that Jesus is about to call down fire on Zacchaeus. But instead, Jesus does something absolutely appalling. He said, Zacchaeus, come down, because I'm going to your house today. Now, we don't really understand how shocking that would have been. Now, there's some things that are kind of strange about this. Like, it would be strange if someone just came up to you and said, hey, I know we just met, but I'm going to eat dinner at your house and sleep on your couch tonight. That would be weird in our day. But in Jesus' day, that wouldn't have been weird at all. In fact, it would have been a great honor. It would have been a great honor if this revered teacher invited himself to your house. Everyone in Jericho was secretly hoping that Jesus would sleep on their couch that night. So the scandalous thing is not that Jesus invites himself to someone's house. The scandalous thing is that Jesus invites himself to Zacchaeus' house. That was a total shock. You see, in that culture, if you ate at the home of someone who became rich through corruption, it was like you were part of the injustice. So imagine, just to kind of put it in modern terms, imagine today you learn that a candidate for public office has been financed by a drug cartel. That is utterly scandalous. We would be outraged. But that's how the crowds are looking at this. Because you got to realize, Jesus isn't just staying at Zacchaeus' house. Jesus is staying at the house that Zacchaeus bought with the money that he stole from them. Jesus isn't just eating Zacchaeus' food. Jesus is eating the food that Zacchaeus bought with their money. See, when Jesus goes to Zacchaeus' house, he's not just identifying with Zacchaeus. He is identifying with Zacchaeus' sin. That is absolutely scandalous. The Son of God identifies with the worst of sinners. God eats dinner with his enemies. But remember where Jesus is going in this passage. Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. He is on his way to the cross. And at the cross, that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to identify with our sin. He's going to identify with it so closely that he himself is going to bear the punishment for it. On the cross, Jesus was treated as if he had committed our sins so that we could come into his kingdom. He died and rose again in our place so those of us who trust in him could be forgiven and could come into his kingdom and eat with him. That thing in your past that you are so ashamed of. That secret that you don't want anyone to know about. That sin that you try to hide from everyone, including yourself. That's the sin Jesus died for. Jesus identified with it. Jesus bore it on the cross. He was condemned so that you would be forgiven. And friend, you don't have to hide anymore. Do you see how revolutionary grace is? Do you see how grace changes everything? And yet some of us still push it away. Some of us still reject it. In verses 6 through 10, Luke sets up this contrast. He sets up a contrast between Zacchaeus' reaction and the reaction of the crowds. See, friends, the truth is that you and I will respond to grace in one of two ways. Either we'll respond like Zacchaeus, we'll be amazed by grace, we will put all our hope in the grace of Jesus, or we'll be like the crowds. We'll be repulsed by grace, we'll push it away, we'll recoil from it. Look at the contrast. Look at verses 6 and 7. This is what Luke says. He says, "So he, Zacchaeus, hurried and came down and received him joyfully. And when they, the crowd, saw it, they all grumbled. He's gone to be the guest of a man who's a sinner." Polar opposite responses to Jesus. Zacchaeus receives Jesus with joy. The crowds grumble. Because here's why. The crowds thought that they deserved grace and that Zacchaeus didn't. They thought they were the insiders and Zacchaeus is the outsider. Now let me ask you, where are you in this picture? Are you amazed by the grace of Jesus? Are you putting all your hope in the grace of Jesus? Or are you still trying to prove yourself to God? Are you still finding it scandalous that God would freely forgive sinners? This is a danger for all of us. Whether you're religious or irreligious, rich or poor, progressive or conservative, or anywhere in between, Jesus defies our conventions. Jesus shatters our paradigms. Jesus does not fit into the boxes that we construct for him. And if we try to make him fit into our mold, we'll be just like the crowds. We'll miss out on the kingdom. But before we start to condemn these crowds, let's put ourselves in their shoes for a minute. Remember, Zacchaeus is not just some guy who's a sinner in the abstract. Zacchaeus is not just some bad guy out there. Zacchaeus was a bad guy who had sinned against them. Zacchaeus was a bad guy who had stolen from them. Zacchaeus is a bad guy who has hurt them in real, concrete, costly ways. And they wanted justice. And now the king is here. And the king is supposed to bring justice. The king is supposed to crush people like Zacchaeus. But instead of condemning Zacchaeus, he goes to a party with him. The crowds are disgusted by this. They say, I can't believe in that kind of a king or that kind of a kingdom. I can't believe in a God who accepts people like that. But what about you? Let's take this out of the abstract. Let's make this real. What about those people who have wronged you? What about the people who have hurt you? What if Jesus forgives them? What if Jesus eats with them? Let me ask you, do you want to see your enemies eating at the party with Jesus? The coworker who stole your idea and got the promotion instead of you. The father who abandoned you at a young age. Or maybe he was physically present, but he was emotionally distant. The spouse who disappointed you, who left your life in ruins. The Democrats, the Republicans, the rich, the poor, black people, white people, whoever it is. Do you want Jesus to be their friend? Do you want to see them eating at the table with Jesus? See, there are really two possible errors here, and probably we've got both kinds of people watching this today. Some of us think that the church isn't for people like us. Some of us think we've been too bad, and the church isn't for people like us. But some of us think that the church is only for people like us. And we would never say it that way because in 21st century America, that sounds narrow and exclusive and bigoted. But the truth is, we would rather just be with people who are just like us. The gospel changes all of that. The gospel breaks down these artificial barriers between us and them. And we need this now. Friends, our country is so polarized. It feels like we are ripping apart at the seams. Our social media feeds and our 24-hour news channels disciple us to condemn and dismiss and hate and blame and scapegoat people who are not like us. They tell us those people are the problem. But the gospel changes all that. The gospel says there are no those people. There are just people. People that Jesus loves. People that Jesus died for. We're all broken and we all need healing. We're all sinners and we all need grace. And the church should be a place where people who otherwise wouldn't have anything to do with each other love each other like family. The church should be a place where cops and convicted felons eat dinner together because they both got a record and Jesus has expunged it. That's how the gospel changes everything. That's the kind of community that Jesus creates. The kind of community where outsiders are welcomed in. The kind of community where the broken find healing. The kind of community where the least likely encounter the grace of Jesus. Where Jesus is turning expectations and lives upside down. Oh, let's be that kind of a church. My prayer for Christ Community Church is that we never become the kind of church who's just for people who have it all together. If we're just a church for people who have their stuff together, or at least for people who pretend to have their stuff together, then we will be just like the crowds, clinging to our veneer of self-righteousness and respectability while we miss out on what Jesus is doing in the world. Jesus says you don't have to hide anymore. You don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to prove yourself anymore. Lay down your pretense. Lay down your religious games. Lay down your self-righteousness and come to the party. You see, we have all lived for these gods that have shrunk our souls. Your false gods might not be the same as my false gods. Our false gods might not be the same as Zacchaeus' false gods. But we have all cut ourselves off from God. And the bad news is that none of us deserve Jesus and his kingdom. But the good news is that Jesus came for the undeserving. The only requirement is that you recognize that you don't meet the requirements. All you need is your need. And when you recognize that, when you come to Jesus and receive his grace, when you come to the dinner table and you eat dinner with him, you just might find yourself sitting next to someone that you never imagined having dinner with. The crowds miss it. The crowds rejected Jesus and his grace. But look how Zacchaeus responds to Jesus. Look how Jesus turns our lives upside down. This text shows us three effects of grace in Zacchaeus' life. You're going to see three things, and we're going to go through these quickly. Grace produces joy, grace produces generosity, and grace produces justice. First thing you see in Zacchaeus' life, grace produced joy. Look at verse 6. So he hurried and came down and received him. How? He received him joyfully. Up to this point, Zacchaeus can expect nothing but condemnation from Jesus. But instead of condemnation, he receives forgiveness. He receives acceptance. And that reality overflows in an eruption of joy in his life. And he climbs down the tree as fast as he can, and he receives Jesus with joy. Maybe you're here, maybe you're watching today, and you've been checking out Christianity for a while. Maybe you've heard this story of Jesus, but something's still holding you back. Maybe you got questions. Maybe you're trying to decide if you're going to count the cost and follow Jesus. And that's okay. It's important to explore these things. My prayer is that CCC would be a place where it is safe to wrestle with questions and doubts and objections to Christianity. But there also comes a point when you encounter Jesus, when you experience the grace and the acceptance of Jesus, and you come to him as quickly as you can, and you receive him with joy. And I just want to encourage you today, if that's you, if you're there, don't wait. Don't stay up in the tree when Jesus wants to have dinner with you. Zacchaeus is filled with joy because Jesus is coming to his house. But in the immortal words of the great band Boston, this is more than a feeling for Zacchaeus. For Zacchaeus, it's not just a feeling of joy. Grace produces more than a feeling. Grace turned his life upside down. It made him generous. Look at verse 8. And Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, "Behold, Lord, the half my goods I give to the poor." That's generosity. And he says, "If I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold." That's justice. Do you see how grace turned his life upside down? Grace makes Zacchaeus generous. Justification makes him just. Jesus has freely forgiven Zacchaeus, and now Zacchaeus freely gives to others. You see, when you realize that Jesus has freely canceled your debt, you're set free to freely give to others. The reality of grace should make Christians the most joyful and generous people in the world. How great would it be if we were known as that? How great would it be if when people think of CCC, they don't think of some stuffy religious people who look down their noses at other people. Instead, they say, you know what? Those are the most generous and joyful people in this town because Jesus has turned their lives upside down. But you got to make sure that you get the order right. This is important. Grace comes first. We don't change ourselves in order to earn God's grace. We receive God's grace, and then that changes everything. Here's what a lot of people think Christianity is. A lot of people think Christianity is where you get yourself cleaned up and then you come to Jesus. But the Bible teaches the opposite. The Bible teaches that you come to Jesus with all of your sin, with all of your messiness, with all of your dirtiness. You simply come to Jesus and then He makes you clean. Christianity is not change your life so Jesus will accept you. Christianity says Jesus accepts you. And that reality changes your life. That's a change that the Bible calls repentance. Repentance isn't simply changing your behavior. Repentance isn't a religious ritual. It's not saying some prayers or confessing to a priest. Repentance means that Jesus has turned our lives upside down. Repentance is a complete reorientation of our lives where we stop seeking joy in all of these false gods and we start seeking our joy in the one true God. That's what happened to Zacchaeus here. Because money is no longer the most important thing in his life, he is set free from his power. He is set free to stop living for money and to live for the good of others. And if we have experienced the grace of Jesus, that's how it'll change us as well. We have found acceptance at the table with Jesus, and that acceptance means that we no longer have to live for the false promises of these make-believe kingdoms. Because the real King is here, and He has come to give us life. At the end of the day, friends, that's what Jesus came to do. That's why Jesus came. Look what He says, verse 10. The Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. The Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. That's what you see in this passage. Jesus seeks out Zacchaeus. Jesus invites Himself to Zacchaeus' house. Jesus seeks and saves the lost. Zacchaeus brings nothing to the table but his sin. And it's the same for you and me. We don't bring anything to the table. Nothing but our sin and our brokenness and our need. But Jesus seeks us and He saves us and He calls us to the table to eat with Him. The King welcomes us into His kingdom. The Father welcomes us to His dinner table. Now maybe you're here and you've never experienced this. Maybe you're listening to this day and you say, you know what, that sounds good, but I don't even know what that means. I don't know what it means to have my sins forgiven. And I just want to tell you clearly today, Jesus died and rose again so that your sins could be forgiven and that you could know Him personally. He lived the life you should have lived. He died the death you deserve to die. He rose again, conquering sin and death and hell so that you could know Him personally now and for all eternity. And all that's necessary is that you trust in Him. You don't have to do some religious rituals. You don't have to play some religious games. You simply trust in Him. And when you do, He will turn your life upside down. He will set you free in ways that you never dreamed possible. And if you're interested in exploring that further, we would love to speak with you. Reach out to someone from CCC. You can send me a message on Facebook if you want. I would love to connect with you. But don't miss out on the upside down grace of Jesus any longer. Now, maybe you have experienced this. Maybe you're a Christian. Maybe you're a follower of Jesus. And I just want to encourage you to remember this last verse. Verse 10, the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. That's His mission. That's why He came. That's what He's done with us. He has sought us out. He has saved us. And when He saves us, He sends us out to join Him on that mission. Christ Community Church, when it really comes down to it, this is why we exist as a church. Because Jesus came to seek and to save the lost. We were lost, and He came and He sought and He saved us. And when we experience the mercy of Jesus, we go out to our towns and our neighborhoods and our families and our world, and we share the message of Jesus with them. Jesus calls us to come home for dinner, and then He sends us out to invite more and more people to the feast. So let's do that. Let's invite more and more people to come and eat with him. And let's never think that someone is beyond the grace of God. Let's never think that someone is too far gone or too bad. I pray that Christ Community Church is always a church where the people who are far from God, the people that we would least expect, are coming to Jesus and are experiencing the kind of grace that turns our lives upside down. Let's pray. Let's ask him to do that. Father in heaven, we are astounded by your grace. We are amazed that you would love us. Jesus, we are amazed that you would come after us, that you would seek us out in our sin, in our dirtiness, in our messiness. We have nothing to bring to the table, Lord, nothing but our sin and our brokenness and our need. But thank you that you love us. Thank you that you've died for us and risen again. Thank you that you came to seek and to save the lost. And I pray that not only would we experience this, but I pray that other people all over Fredonia and northern Chautauqua County and western New York would come to experience the grace of Jesus that turns our lives upside down. We pray it in Christ's name. Amen.
By now, those of you who are members of CCC should have received a packet of information which includes the annual reports, a cream-colored sheet with instructions for a question and answer session with Josh and Traci Stahley, and a ballot for next year's officers, the budget, and our pastoral candidate. I want to give a special thanks to Charlene Ryder, who assembled all these materials, and Marilyn Hall, who helped her organize and mail these packets. On this coming Wednesday, June 10th, the Pastoral Search Committee will host a question and answer session with Josh and Traci starting at 7 o'clock p.m. and lasting until 8:30 p.m. This will be held through the video conference program called Zoom. By now, you should have received instructions for how you can attend the meeting. Please submit your questions for Josh or Traci in advance to the following email address: searchcommittee@christcommunityfredonia.com. During the Zoom meeting, you also have the opportunity to submit questions through the chat function. If you do not have video conferencing capacity, you may dial in. The sheet that you have received contains instructions explaining who to call for tech support if you have trouble making the Zoom connection. I will be one of the first to call. If you cannot attend, the session will be recorded and posted to the church's website. Members should mail their completed ballots to the church office at the following address: Christ Community Church, 219 Berry Road, Fredonia, New York, 14063. Mail them between June 11 and June 15. Please remember to include not only your vote for next year's officers and the church budget, but also your vote on the pastoral candidate. They're all on the one ballot. Make sure you complete all parts of that ballot. Next week, stay tuned for an announcement about how and when the votes will be tallied and the results announced. Until then, please be in prayer for Christ Community Church, how you should vote, and the exciting year that lies ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being a part of our service today. With all the new and exciting things going on, please head over to christcommunityfredonia.com to stay up to date with everything happening here at Christ Community Church. You can also find our bulletin there, or you can visit our Facebook page for all this information. Thank you and have a great week.